Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to Political Soul Food. Let's do this. I want to talk a little bit about Martin Luther King Jr. again. And every time I read Martin Luther King Jr.'s words, I'm filled with energy, passion, and wisdom. And I want to share that with you, all of that good stuff. So, tonight, what I want to get into is simple. I want to get into the advice that we can take from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to deal with white nationalism today. That's where we headed with this. That's exactly where we headed with this. What can Martin Luther King Jr. tell us today? And believe me, he can tell us a lot. So what I'm going to do right now is direct your attention to the word of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. There's a book called Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community. This book was published in 1967, a year before he's murdered. Now, I mentioned King before. I mentioned some of the things that I felt he would say about MAGA. And just the same, I'm bringing some of his words from the past, from his experiences, that could shed light on what we're dealing with today. Because at the end of the day, we're dealing with racism. We're dealing with what Dr. Carol Anderson calls white rage. And that is the racial resentment that many white people have against the increase of equality for black people and minorities. That's that. So we're facing that resistance. I played a clip not too long ago of someone who I still to this day had expressed his racism in the most polite way I've ever heard. And he basically confessed that he doesn't recognize his America. He doesn't recognize his mall, his town, his country. And you got to ask yourself, what does it mean for a person to not recognize their country or their mall? Well, he said it for himself. So there was like, I don't need to interpret. You don't need to interpret. I'm not going to put words in his mouth. He basically complained about the diversity. Now, he was nice. He says, I'm sure a lot of people here are all cool. I'm sure a lot of people here, most of everybody are good human beings, but it just doesn't feel like my mall, my country anymore. And King talks about that as well, the different shades of racism. You have the more overt kind, and you have the low-key kind, and you have the unconscious kind, where it's like, well, I don't see racism. I just want the world to be the way it always has been, which is the status quo. Now, let me jump on to what King can tell us, because this is very important. This is very, very important, especially for anyone who wants to resolve racial and economic justice. If you're trying to resolve that issue, then this is your message. So again, I'm coming from King's book. All right? Where do we go from here? Chaos or community? Now, basically, I'm picking up a passage that is kind of speaking to the next stage of the civil rights game plan. And so King wanted to remind people that we fought in the South because of the blatant, because of the vicious, explicit violence enacted against people of color. And that was the motivation for King's fight, particularly in the South. Now, as progress is made, particularly in the signing of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, King was very much aware that we have to do more work in the North, which in the urban communities had a sort of a different kind of racism to deal with. Well, racism altogether, but the different kinds of effects. And so King was saying, all right, we have more work to do. We have more work to do. So I'm not going to recount that this whole section here, but I wanted you to know that this is where I'm coming from. When King is reminding people in the later 60s that we have more work to do. It is not over. And so let me move to a passage that I think that you should hear. So after the success of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, okay, there's a huge success in implementing law. And again, we're not going to confuse the signing of a law with the actual changes in people's action immediately, right? This is still, again, a process. But the process, as we can see, consists of little steps building up. Now, after that, shifting towards the north, King is telling people something very important that we need to hear right now, especially coming out of an amazing success of electing the first black president, your boy, my boy. Take a quick peek. All right, give it a quick peek. Barack Obama. All right. He said this. I'm going to back it up a little bit. He says, in assessing the results of the Negro Revolution so far, it can be concluded that Negroes have established a foothold. No more, just a foothold. We have written a Declaration of Independence, itself an accomplishment. But the effort to transform the words into a life experience still lies ahead. And here it is. Listen to this closely. The hard truth is that neither Negro nor white has yet done enough to expect the dawn of a new day. Let me just stop right there. I said this to a friend who was like, what? No, King don't understand what he's talking about. We endured enough. We sacrificed enough. We've done everything that we need to be doing. And in fact, it shouldn't be a matter of the excuse being on us for our freedom. I mean, basically, we are living through an injustice. And King's like, you're right. But he wants us to own our freedom. He wants us to keep in mind that we are never done until we have arrived at this racial and economic justice. A racial and economic justice and a democracy. This is a reminder that we own our accomplishment. We own this battle. And that just because we had a success in the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, it is not over. It's just a foothold. Now, King is keeping it real more than me, because I basically called Barack Obama's elections, I called them touchdowns, and then I kind of rolled back and said, all right, they're first downs, right? But King is just saying, we got a foothold, and the foothold is just like, the war is still going on. You just got a little bit of an advancement, and you're situated in a place a little further along from where you were before. And King continues here, while much has been done, it has been accomplished by too few and on a scale too limited for the breadth of the goal. And this is real. This is so real, because many I know talk about the flaws. They talk about the flaws only of individual people of color, black people, brown people, minorities, Latino, all. They talk about the flaws as if if we were to remove the flaws of these different individuals, we would have arrived at some success. So if we remove the flaws of the perceived flaws of Obama, that we would have somehow made America an equitable society after removing whatever flaws every individual saw in him. The problem is that we don't see the scope of the goal, the depth of the goal, and the resistance between the goal we want and us. That's the key. And King continues saying, freedom is not won by a passive acceptance of suffering. And that's important because it means, well, even for people like myself who say, well, all we got to do is keep trying and be patient. Okay. And even that is not the passive acceptance. But King is reminding, even if you had that sort of mindset or attitude, that you got to be on your grind. He says freedom is won by a struggling against suffering. So insofar that there is suffering in our community that we are experiencing or that our brothers and sisters are experiencing, we must fight. And then he continues, by this measure, Negroes have not yet paid the full price for freedom, and whites have not yet faced the full cost of justice. And that's what we're seeing now. So, very quickly, my people of color out here who have become disappointed or discouraged by the lack of success that you wanted and expected in President Barack Obama's presidency, you have to realize that what we're asking for, what we're aiming for, is much bigger and much more complex than what one person, President Barack Obama, can achieve, even if we remove all of his flaws. In fact, to pay the full price means that all of us together must come together and be engaged in every way possible. And that would mean there'll be much less time to complain about somebody else's imperfection, because we'll be busy helping and motivating others to do the best that they can do. And even carrying the baton, moving forward where other people drop the baton or give up and quit or just run in the wrong direction. Okay, that is what paying the full price is all about. For us, that means we are trying to cash in our check for freedom, for justice. If somebody gave you a check right now of $1 million, but you can only cash it at a certain bank, I'm sure you'll find a way to get to that bank. That bank was on top of the tallest mountain on earth. You will get up there. If it were in the lowest valley on the planet, you will find a way to get down there to cash your $1 million check. Okay? This is freedom. You're going to go for it. Okay? You want to cash in your check for freedom, and you're going to find one way or another to get there. Even if not for yourself, for your people, for your family, for your children, and others. So it's on us. That's what he's saying. And he's never saying that we don't deserve it right now. But he's telling us that at the end of the day, if somebody's not going to hand it to you, then it's up to you, all of us together, to work as hard as we can to achieve that goal. All right, and now he's not just talking to black people, people of color. I know many of us like to say, oh, don't come chastising black people. We're the one that's suffering. Yes, yes, yes. But he's talking to whites as well. Because a lot of people, and I have friends who are quite uneasy with the the Black Lives Matter campaign. They're quite uneasy with the demands for reparation. They're quite uneasy with the continued support for affirmative action, thinking that, well, we've come a long way. Nobody's in chains. Jim Crow is long gone. And we're more or less equal. And they give themselves as an example, or others. Well, I'm struggling trying to pay bills. And I'm struggling trying to pay off my student loans. I'm struggling trying to keep a job. Or get one in the first place. And they don't understand that the full course of justice, in the context of American history, with respect to black people, is a high cost. And as American white citizens, they are going to have to contribute to that cost. Which means that, there's a certain kind of privilege that for them seems to be just natural that, will erode, because that privilege is oppressive to others who are unjustly obstructed from having a fair share and a fair shot. And that means the problems that the natural problems that any society would have if racism didn't exist will be spread out more evenly. And that's the key. Right? It's never to say that they're not poor white people, they're not white people who are suffering, under, the exploitative practices of capitalism. No, we're not saying that. We understand that. But we are saying that in terms of critical mass, that our society is more rewarding for some and more harsh for others on average. And that's where the injustice comes in. Okay? Now, let me just read a little bit more. It says the brunt of the Negroes' past battles was borne by a very small striking force. Though millions of Negroes were ardent and passionate supporters, only a modest number were actively engaged, and these were relatively too few for a broad war against racism, poverty, and discrimination. So, all of us can do more. All of us can do more, is what King is saying. King is reminding us that we should not just put all of our burdens on one politician or one black leader. I mean, many people, those who are against Obama and for Malcolm X, they're talking about Malcolm X like he was the only one, and that whatever he didn't do will remain left undone. No. You carry the cross as well. Help carry that cross, that burden. And do it in the way that you can, as best as you can. And obviously, you're going to hear me say, one of those ways is voting, but it's not the only way. And it's not antithetical to economic solidarity and practicing all sorts of internal support network groups. Okay? It's not against that. It's creating an intersection of positive action. Now, he says finally, Negroes fought and won, but our engagements were skirmishes, not climactic battles. See, this is the deal here. We have to see the continuity of the struggle and of progress. And so when many people are so easily dismayed, then they mess up the flow. And when you mess up the flow, you slow the progress down. When you slow the progress down, you take away the impact, the building force, the momentum which comes with a lot more force that could be way more effective over time. But we have to keep it up. So these, we win here and then we get discouraged when things are not fully, successful in some way. Then it's like, oh, and then we have to keep resetting, keep resetting, keep resetting. And you can't build a legacy like that. You don't. You build a legacy by consistently investing in the legacy itself. All right. So let's not think in terms of skirmishes. Let's not think in terms of this battle and that battle and only evaluate our progress based on these isolated battles. We have to look at them as little Lego chips that we put on top of each other and keep adding and adding and adding and adding. That's the key, my friends. That's the key. So with that perspective, which shapes our attitude and then our action, we would be able to, well, I think we would have been able to defeat Trump despite his assistance from Russian nationals and from the GOP, who enacted voter suppression and gerrymandering on his behalf. Okay, because it would have, I think we would have overcompensated enough to prevent him from winning by the very small margins in certain swing states, such as Michigan, for one. And so, in dealing with people who do not have this sort of accumulative and far-sighted vision of progress in politics, then it's like we have to remotivate people. But that is part of life too. I mean, if you look at every team, major sports team in the NBA and NFL, they have coaches to remind them, hey, you got to keep doing this. But the coaching is happening in the game. And so we're in the political game. And I'm trying to offer some of that coaching. And so that you can spread it, and so that it's continuous. It's continuous over and over and over. This is what we need to do to keep up the momentum so we don't drop the ball, because we picked up great momentum during the Obama presidency. And so much of Trump's win also falls on us as well, despite, again, his support from Russia and also fake liberals and fake radicals, and also the conniving work of the GOP in suppressing black votes. And also the disinformation and misinformation that was proliferated throughout our society to get us discouraged about our own first black president, about our own progress. Can you imagine that? That is formidable. But it is defeatable. And that's what we got to keep in mind. It is defeatable. So, can I add on a little bit more here, y'all? This is getting good. I don't know about y'all. It's getting good for me. This is like what political soul food tastes like. He says, no great victories are won in a war for the transformation of a whole people without total participation. Total participation. I can't do it without your help, and it's less likely you'll be able to do it alone. You may be able to do certain things alone. You may have certain skill sets that I don't have, a certain understanding of certain scenarios and issues, right? But whatever you got going on, I need to support it. It may not be a direct support. It could be an indirect support in making what you're doing more well known to the collective community. All right. So I'm going to stop here. So this is the advice here. The advice is that there's more work to be done. Okay. And that we should always remember that every time we score some successes, that success will in itself engender a backlash. And that should remind us that racists are not just sitting by and saying, let's see if they can achieve their goal. They're not just saying, okay, we're not going to help you, but if you make it, fine. No, they are pushing back. They're trying to push you back. They're trying to take, as Trump said, take our country back. They're trying to make their America great again. Please listen to these words. And it's hard. I know it is hard for us to really see this because life is just so busy and there's so much to do and you want to live. And it's like, what does it mean for us to be committed to this? What does total participation mean? Does it mean that I do not enjoy the little that I have, that I've accomplished? And that is tricky. But that is tricky. However, we can work together in ways that allow each other to get some less. We're not going to carry that same burden all alone. Some of you are in the entertainment industry, in education, in science and technology, in law, in business, and so on. And in those different spaces in our society, you can make that change. And we all can make the change collectively together when it's time to vote. Of course, we can do that. We definitely can do that together. But we also can set up networks. We also can set up our youth. We also can work with organizations in the community or even create some. This is what total participation looks like. All right? That's total participation in the way that we can do it as individuals. But see, when we all do that little bit, it becomes an enormous amount. And that's the trick. That's the trick. And so we often forget that we're not alone. That if we all chip in, we can create a fortune of potential. And we can spend that as political, economic, social, cultural, intellectual capital to make investments in each other, directly into people, directly into institutions, and into resources, right? Again, do not think of these little tit for tats as isolated events because you're going to get discouraged when you don't get everything. It's a narrative that continues and it's an arc of justice. That arc of justice that King always talks about and Obama always reminds us that King says, we're actually building that arc. It's a great project that we're on. We're building the arc. Now, if we forget that we have to build the arc that will bend towards justice, then when things don't go our way, when we just focus on the flaws of the first black president or focus on the flaws of a local politician only, then we drop our bricks. We drop our tools, and the arc doesn't get done. It is not completed. And King wants us to remember that these are not isolated struggles. They're not independent struggles. All right? So in that way, you can remember that you're on a journey, you're on a mission, and that each battle we succeed in or lose is just one of many more to come. And guess what? The ball is in our court. The ball is in our progression, in our possession. We moved it from the conditions that people were in 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 70 years ago, 80 years ago, 90 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago in this American society. But people might say, well, but some things still haven't changed. That means that things that haven't changed reminds us that it's not over. But certainly things have changed. And if you don't know that, then you haven't really read American history and you haven't really processed that history. It hasn't really hit you in a way that you can really see and feel it, at least vicariously. So you probably need to talk to somebody, or I would say usually the antidote for this is really reading narratives, especially slave narratives. That was the eye-opener for me. Reading slave narratives. And also certain fiction books like Uncle Tom's Cabin. Because when you hear these personal stories, and it's not like rendered as sort of bullet line points and facts and details, like an inventory list of the past, when you read the emotions and the pain, the expression of pain, the the cries of an existential crisis. You feel it, you see it, you taste it, and you understand that the environment, that the political and social environment that people were in then is not the same as the environment that we're in now. But because there are people trying to hold up and protect this edifice of oppression, this edifice of hierarchy, hereditary hierarchy, there may be some things we tear down and get rebuilt. You know, there may be things that we tear down, but people memorialize in our society. These are reminders that our work is not done. Thanks again for tuning into Political Soul Food. Listen, if you want to support what I'm doing here, check out Patreon, P-A-T-R-E, Patreon, did I say that right? Patreon.com/Kassan Henry, as it's spelled on the social media platforms. And you can find ways to support and donate, or you can go to paypal.me/Kassan Henry, and or just come here and show some love, like these videos. Check out my YouTube page, same name, Kassan Henry. Give me some likes, subscribe, and spread the word. Do your thing out here in life. All right, over and out, peeps. Love y'all all. Keep your head up. Do it. Make it happen. All right. Peace out, y'all.